Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Retired Living Truth series, and today's topic is the truth about cannabis for seniors. And my name's Brett Janelle, and I'm here with my business partner and wife, Annette Janelle.
Hi, everybody.
And thank you all so much for being here. I see we have a lot of people on the call today, so wonderful. So we had someone just ask us the last few days, why are we doing a topic on cannabis? And the reason this kind of came about is, for those who know us, which is a lot of people I can see on the call, Annette and I both own a real estate business and a move management business where we help seniors who are in the process of downsizing. And at times we'll go out and meet with someone at their home and they have a concern because they've been using marijuana either recreationally or medically or both. And they're just worried, do they have to disclose that? Is it going to cause a problem with the sale? And then similarly, we work with buyers and we're showing homes and they'll be able to smell marijuana and want to know, is this illegal? What is the case? And for those who don't know, marijuana use is both legal for recreational use and medical use here in the state of Nevada. But Annette and I didn't really know a lot about marijuana other than how it impacts real estate. So we thought this would be a fantastic opportunity to get some experts on a call with us so we could learn a lot more about cannabis. So today we have two fantastic experts that we've both had the pleasure of speaking with. And they've got some great information to share, and I'll introduce them in just a moment. But just before we do that, I just wanted to touch on some housekeeping. We sent out a survey a couple of weeks ago, or actually I think it was last week, just getting feedback on the webinars. Given we're not doing these in person, we're all doing them via webinar, which is interesting because I feel like I'm sitting here talking to myself. But just a couple of housekeeping items. From the survey, a couple of things came up. For some people, it just wasn't clear how to ask questions. So you should be able to see our slide on the screen at the moment. And what is appearing, and I'm looking at a different computer screen so I can try to explain. If you want to type in a question as our panelists or we're speaking, you're more than welcome to. And on your screen, depending on what device you're on, there'll be a little Q&A button that you can click on, question and answer. And if you click on that, it will pop up another screen that allows you to type in your question. And we'll see that, and then as the questions come up, we can answer those at the appropriate time. You'll also notice beside that, whether you're on a computer, a tablet, or a mobile phone, there's also raise hand. So if you'd like us to unmute you, we can do so, and then you can ask our panelists or ourselves whatever question you might have. So I've just highlighted that. Hopefully you can see that on the device that you're on, the raise hand. If you're not seeing those appear on your screen, somewhere else on your screen, you'll see, typically it's a green banner, and that's where your controls are. And if you're on a computer, you might have to actually move your mouse over that for the raise hand Q&A button to appear. So somewhere on your screen, you should have that ability. Again, it's different for each device. And then one of the other feedback we got from the survey was people would like to see us full screen. I know, and it's very beautiful, and some say I'm handsome. So I can understand people wanting to see us full screen, not just a little thumbnail. So what you can do on all the devices is either using your mouse or your finger is clicking on the thumbnail. So if you clicked on the thumbnail of us appearing in the top right-hand corner, I guess is what everyone's seeing at the moment, that would make us full screen, and then the slide would become small. And then you can alternate by just doing the reverse click on the thumbnail at the top, and it'll swap backwards and forwards. So hopefully that helps people. Several people had asked about that.
And then I just wanted to point out, we have a couple people that are joining us via phone, so obviously they can't see any of these items. So if you have a question and you're on the phone, you just do *9 on your phone, and it will alert us that you have a question.
Yeah, and then we'll unmute you at the appropriate time, and you can ask your question, or if you, so *9 if you're just on the phone. So thank you, Annette. I forgot to mention that, so much appreciated. And then I just wanted to thank our sponsors. I see we have a number of sponsors on the call today, which is always fantastic. Again, we'd rather be in the room with them, but we really appreciate their support and input and ideas as we've been moving over to doing this via webinar. And we have a new sponsor I just wanted to make mention of and welcome. And I'm just curious if people who can see the slide up on the screen at the moment with all of our sponsors, if you can pick who the new sponsor is. And if you can, I'd just love people to raise their hand. So this is good practice. If you're able to click on the raise hand, if you're able to see who the new sponsor is. Oh, some very, yes, some people definitely know who our sponsors are and have already spotted the new sponsor. And the new sponsor is Clearwater at Ranchera. and we'd like to welcome them. They are a new assisted living memory care community being built over on the Harrah's Ranchera property, the new development, just near Revel Ranchera, next door actually, over on Kitski in Reno. So welcome to Clearwater. Great to have you guys involved as part of the program. So now we'd just like to welcome our two fantastic panelists, and sorry, and it's moving, oh, lowering the hands, thank you, Annette. Excellent. So let's get started. I'd like to start off by welcoming both of our panelists. Maybe if we could start with you, Leslie. Could you just share your name and what you do, the services, and why you might be on the call today?
Sure. My name is Leslie Baker, and I am the Director of Geriatric Pharmacy Services at the Sanford Center for Aging up on the UNR campus. And as a pharmacist, I do not fill the typical role of a pharmacist, but I do comprehensive medication reviews for people out in the community. We have a grant-funded program that allows us to do free medication reviews. So I review prescription and over-the-counter and dietary supplements for people. And then I'm also part of our comprehensive geriatric assessment team, where we provide comprehensive geriatric assessments for older adults. And that is part of our clinical services that we provide at the Sanford Center for Aging.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Leslie, and welcome. And
Thank
we
you.
also have with us Ed Alexander. Could you introduce us and tell us a little bit about yourself, Ed, what you do?
Sure. My name is Ed Alexander. I'm the founder and one of the owners of Soul Cannabis. We operate a dispensary, a cultivation facility, and a production facility out in Washoe Valley near the Chocolate Nugget. I've been in the cannabis industry about 20 years. My previous experiences, I ran a very large wholesale supply house, and I got into the cannabis space because I had two parents that utilized marijuana for the treatment of very rare diseases, and have seen extreme efficacy in the proper use of both THC products like marijuana or cannabis, and also CBD. So really just want to make sure that we have a very open platform for educating folks as to the benefits associated with cannabis and CBD use.
Great, thank you, Ed. And I know you both have a huge amount of knowledge, both in terms of drugs and interactions and cannabis and how it can benefit, and we're going to find out a little bit of that today. Unfortunately, we only have an hour, but there are, as you said, a lot of misconceptions and myths around it. And I guess the first one, we hear many different terms, you know, weed, marijuana, cannabis. Are they all one and the same? Are they interchangeable?
Yes, you know, for the most part, all of them are interchangeable. You know, we've really tried to eliminate some of the stigmas associated with cannabis use. You know, so cannabis is the scientific name for marijuana or weed or dope or any of the other things. And in trying to bring more legitimacy to this as both a medical and a recreational substance, we've just tried to make sure that folks speak about it in as clinical a way as possible.
Great. Well, you know, I was curious about CBD and THC. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between those two?
Sure. So both THC and CBD are both compounds that are prevalent in the marijuana plant. CBD is a non-psychoactive component, and what that means is that you don't experience the inebriation associated, you know, the giggling and the munchies and some of the other side effects that sometimes are associated with marijuana. It is a fantastic analgesic, which means great for dealing with pain. Has shown tremendous efficacy as an anti-inflammatory. I'm going to qualify this by saying, based on the fact that both of the substances have been federally prohibited for the last 50 years. So a lot of the data and the research that we have comes out of countries like Israel, that's, you know, about 30 years, 35 years ahead of us in terms of studying the marijuana plant and THC and CBD. And then THC is the psychoactive component Again, has lots of medical, anti-tumor properties have been shown, anti-seizure properties, again, an analgesic, but it is more of the inebriating component. And so, speaking to the group that we have here, a lot of times we see our elder population, they start with CBD, find some relief, it helps with inflammation, it helps with general body aches. Then sometimes they slowly transition into something that may not be completely inebriating, but have a little bit of psychoactive components. So we have a lot of ratioed products where we might see 10 milligrams of CBD to a single milligram of THC, and the synergistic effect has been shown that CBD is far more effective with an incremental amount of THC in it. So by federal guidelines, CBD is legal in all 50 states, provided that it has less than 3% THC associated with the product. Does that make sense?
It does. And that term, Ed, efficacy. So just explain what you meant by that earlier.
Efficacy is how effective a product is. So sometimes if you had a migraine and you took a baby aspirin, you might not find that to be effective or have efficacy. Whereas if you took 1,000 milligrams of ibuprofen, it would be more effective. So anytime I mention a term that doesn't ring as familiar, please, I'll try to keep things as layperson as humanly possible.
Thank you. I appreciate that for my benefit, Ed. So,
Likewise.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the benefits, why someone might choose to use a cannabis-based product. Maybe Leslie, are there certain circumstances where I should or shouldn't use it? And Ed, I'll have you jump in as well. What should be aware of if we're considering maybe using it for some of the things Ed mentioned about, pain and so forth? Is there anything we need to be careful of?
I think, as Ed said, it's unfortunate that we in the United States don't have a lot of data behind CBD and cannabis in general. So I think we do not do a very good job of educating folks in our medical schools or our pharmacy schools about cannabis and CBD and the potential benefits that it may have. And I think what I would say is, because there are maybe some pitfalls to it, that if you are have tried other conventional treatments and they have not been effective, then that is a great time to think about, maybe exploring some of the options with using cannabis, CBD, and THC. And not only just traditional Western medicine things, but I encourage people to explore looking at acupuncture, for pain, massage therapy, physical therapy, the whole modality of treatments. We tend to very much be a society of wanting a medication to maybe fix what ails us, and that necessarily isn't always a great answer. So I think it's keeping an open mind and looking at lots of different modalities of treatment.
Wonderful, thank you. And then Ed, what are some of the other reasons that people use a cannabis-based product? What do you see people using medically?
What we have seen is as our population ages, and even some of the younger folks, some of the unintended consequences or side effects associated with conventional pharmaceuticals may not be something that they want to experience. So if you're habitually using ibuprofen to deal with a headache, and the side effect damage your liver or your kidneys or something of that nature, we find a lot of people that come in here looking for the alternative treatments, as Leslie had indicated, And I do want to tell everybody in the webinar that the first bit of counseling that we provide is that you need to have an open and honest dialogue with your doctor as it relates to incorporating any sort of new treatment option, whether it be cannabis, CBD, or simply exercising. While data support in pharmacology is what's called an LD, which is a lethal dose. And so aspirin, ibuprofen, even water has a lethal dose. One of the reasons that we've seen
Ed, can I interrupt you just for one moment? My apologies. I think we're all experiencing you cutting in and out. I'm wondering if we could just try turning off your video, so at least maybe the audio will be clear without having to transmit video. Maybe that'll be a little better. Let's see how that works.
Are we better now?
I think so.
Okay, so what I was saying is let's make sure that we include our doctor in any conversation that include, when we're adding any type of treatment option, whether it be marijuana or exercise, and then referring to the fact that most, if not all, pharmaceutical products have a lethal dose, which is it's referred to as an LD. One of the reasons why we see folks gravitating towards cannabis as a treatment option is that there isn't a lethal dose associated. An overdose of marijuana oftentimes may be scary, and it may induce a little bit of panic or anxiety, but typically the remedy is a good night's sleep. CBD is also known to counteract the psychoactive effects of THC. So if in fact you had too much of a marijuana brownie, if you took some CBD rather, you would find that the psychoactive effects of the CBD were dissipated quite rapidly. We find people coming in here for pain management. We find people coming in looking for help with sleep, help with anxiety. Personally, I had a full shoulder replacement about 19 months ago. I chose to do the entire rehab without the use of any pharmaceuticals. So I used a topically applied lotion along with an orally administered liquid, which we refer to as a tincture, along with an inhalable. And while it probably wasn't as effective as an opiate, I also didn't risk the addiction aspect associated with using opioids to treat pain.
Good point.
I'm just kind of curious because if I was looking to, and I needed some kind of medical assistance, like for instance, a shoulder, like you were talking about, I am a complete layperson. I'd have no idea. So you mentioned talking to your doctor, but if your doctor doesn't recommend marijuana, then do you just go to your dispensary, for instance? Is that where you would go to get this advice?
Yeah, so and this isn't a selfless plug, we pride ourselves on being the most medicinally minded dispensary in the state. So we have a big, beautiful facility out here in Washoe Valley. We've got lots of area where in a very non-threatening environment, people can come out and ask questions. We encourage people that may not have any experience with marijuana or CBD to come out and take as much time as they need to so that we can provide them with a knowledge base. Because while I don't ever expect anyone or everyone to convert as a marijuana enthusiast, I do encourage people to be educated about the decisions that they're making. And there is a lot of misconceptions and misperceptions out there about marijuana, and as our populace continues to age, there's more and more baby boomers that experienced marijuana back in the 60s and may not have had any exposure to it since then. So we encourage people to come out so that we can answer questions and talk to them about the you know, there's so many different delivery options available, from the traditional smoking of marijuana to the edible marijuana to topicals and patches and creams. You know, the delivery options are seemingly endless at this point.
Thank you, Ed. So Leslie, just following up on that, I'm just curious, from a medical point of view, you know, being a pharmacist and drug interactions and so forth, Annette was asking about going to your doctor. So why do so few doctors, you know, have knowledge or expertise? I have my theories to do with powerful lobbying groups and money and so forth, but why aren't the doctors better educated, at least in this country? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think a lot of that, well, a couple of reasons. Part of it, I think, is because it is still illegal federally. You know, medical schools get funding from federal entities. So there's that, you know, concern of, are we potentially going to get our funding taken away from our school? And that's also, again, with the research. You know, there's a minimal amounts of research in humans in the United States. And again, that's because, partially because it's illegal federally, and so much of the funding that goes into research are federal dollars. And I think, you know, as Ed pointed out, we all would like to think that going to our physician is going to have them give us the information that we want. And I think the reality is there are just so few of them that are educated in it. And so they, you know, may not be a great source of information. And it's unfortunate in the state of Nevada, we are kind of behind the times compared to a lot of states. There are states that have physicians that will diagnose somebody and prescribe marijuana or cannabis, and then they in turn go to a pharmacist that does the dosing for it. So, you know, we're kind of behind the times in a lot of ways in the cannabis industry, I think, but especially in the state of Nevada, we definitely are a bit behind the times there. And the same with just asking a physician, going to your local pharmacist and asking them about drug interactions. I would be willing to bet the vast majority of them are going to not have any idea. I mean, I had no idea until about 18 months ago. And I stumbled upon an article about the natural, what's called the endocannabinoid system in the human body. And I was fascinated by that. So really started doing a lot of education and research for myself about cannabis and the potential properties, and then also drug interactions that can occur and disease state drug interactions that can occur.
So for anyone looking at using cannabis in some way, they might have to, you know, take it on ourselves, like we all need to be responsible for in terms of doing research, maybe asking for another doctor or a pharmacist, or in order to get the right information by the sound of it.
Exactly. I think, you know, as with healthcare as a whole, you have to be your own advocate and making sure that you're finding legitimate information, you know, is really important no matter what you're looking at in the healthcare field.
So when you and I were talking, Leslie, earlier this week or last week, you were mentioning about some things, though, you need to be very cautious of if you are looking to consume a cannabis-based product under certain circumstances. Could you maybe just touch on a couple of those for anyone who is thinking about and maybe shouldn't?
Yeah, so the THC and CBD, the two biggest things that we hear the most about, really have some interesting properties when it comes to drug interactions with commercially available drugs. THC typically doesn't have a lot of drug interactions in itself. CBD does. It is a potent enzyme inhibitor, and by that I mean enzymes are what breaks down substances in the human body, so and mammals in general. And it really is kind of a messy situation when you start talking about some of the prescription drugs and how they might affect the metabolism or breakdown of CBD and THC. But the reverse is also true, that THC and CBD can interact and affect drug concentrations for other medications. So they have a relationship between the two that can affect each other. When looking at prescription medications, we know Coumadin or warfarin definitely has a drug interaction with CBD. CBD can increase the amount of time it takes for the blood to clot by interfering with the metabolism or breakdown of warfarin. The same is probably true with other blood thinning medications. So Eliquis, Xarelto, any of those medications. Seizure medications and chemotherapeutic agents. There are a lot of drug interactions there too. So again, it's really making sure that you're being your own advocate and investigating those potential interactions with things that you're taking.
Okay, that's kind of what, like Ed said, you know, you do need to talk to your doctor or so forth if you are on medications, or your pharmacist. So yeah, great advice.
Yeah, to make sure.
One of the things, Brett, that I want to touch on very quickly is we've done we've probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 seniors and other groups of people that have come out from educational component discussions out here at our facility. And we, on one occasion, we gave everybody a very, very low dose of CBD, and there was a couple of folks in the audience that had the Apple watches on that were monitoring blood pressure. And what they found was that their blood pressure, over the course of 45 minutes of having CBD on board, their blood pressure went down. So, you know, as Leslie had indicated, yes, there are interactions. Many of them are known, many of them are speculative. But one of the things that we've experienced is definitely a lowering of blood pressure. So anybody that's on an existing blood pressure medication needs to be cognizant of the fact that it may require scaling back of that. But again, starting with the conversation with your doctor, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but if in fact you try to have a conversation with your doctor and they're not willing to have a THC or CBD conversation, it may be time to explore a different healthcare provider, because like it or not, marijuana, cannabis is here to stay. It has shown efficacy, and so we need to both educate up and coming folks in the medical field, but we also need to make sure that those existing folks are willing to have an open-minded conversation and not let I'll just call it, influence of the pharmaceutical industry who doesn't benefit from THC or CBD sales, impact their ability to properly educate their patients.
You know, Ed, I find it interesting because you said earlier that, or was it Leslie, that said it's legal, CBD is legal everywhere. Is that correct?
That is correct, in all 50 states.
In all 50 states. So, and CBD is the one that can have a counter effect if you're on other medication. It can actually, whereas THC doesn't. Is that correct?
It's not that it doesn't, but it's that CBD is by far the more potent one to affect enzymes in the body. So part of it is that CBD is not absorbed into the body very well. So at low doses, drug interactions really are not clinically significant for the most part. But as you increase that dose, you're going to increase, you know, more of the potential for having drug interactions. And I think Ed brought up a really great point of the low blood pressure that can occur while taking the cannabis or CBD. And For me, that's a really important issue for older adults because we are always concerned about a fall. We know that once an older adult has the fall, that's often going down a very bad road for outcomes. So again, if you're on blood pressure medicines or you're taking other medicines that potentially can lower blood pressure, that's always a really big concern. So thanks for bringing that up, Ed. I think that was a great point.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And is there some numbers?
I apologize.
Is there some number as far as a low dose of CBD? Because I see stores where they're saying that they sell CBD. Is that all low dose? And what is considered low dose?
So historically, I'm going to jump in real quick. So historically, what we've seen, and I'm going to tell people that on our website we've got a unbelievable library of resources. There's a white paper that came out of Israel dealing with epilepsy and seizures and using CBD, and it showed that approximately 20,000 milligrams was needed if THC was not present, but it showed that 20 to 30 milligrams was as effective with a minuscule amount of THC present. So while we don't make we make recommendations or provide advice based on our personal experiences, generally speaking, what we point is to an adult of 150 pounds or less, looking at about 33 milligrams of CBD being an effective dose. An adult of above 150 pounds, 50 milligrams of CBD being a very effective dose. And based on more hours than I can tell you spent with medical professionals and actually the minister of cannabis in Israel, they seem to agree with that type of dosing regimen. Another very valid point is that because we're talking about a plant-based medicine, in the state of Nevada, the tolerances are plus or minus 15% as it relates to the third-party testing that's required. I believe, and Leslie could probably speak to this more specifically than I can, there's a much broader range of allowable deviation in pharmaceuticals. So the material that's tested in the state of Nevada, if I tell you that there's 10 milligrams, there may be 8.5 milligrams, or there may be 11.5 milligrams, but we have the most stringent third-party testing requirements of any state in the United States. Doctors cannot prescribe marijuana because of the fact that it is not a 100% replicatable compound as a plant form over and over and over. As you might imagine, different oranges, for example, may have slightly different concentrations of vitamin C. Different varietals of cannabis have slightly different potencies. So we list the THC content, and it's also a recommendation. When you get your medical card from a doctor, they are recommending that you use marijuana, not prescribing that you use marijuana. So those are two terms that are very, very important to remember.
So on that, Ed and Leslie, I have a couple of follow-up questions. The first one just regarding dosage. You mentioned 30 to 50 milligrams and so forth. And I'd spoken to both of you about that because I'd gone onto Amazon, and I know people do, thinking, okay, I'm going to try out cannabis for my pain or whatever it might be. And if you search for CBD cannabis on Amazon, a million results come back. There's all these wonderful products. Can you just talk about, like you did to me, how that's not necessarily going to provide benefit and people try it and give up, and why that is?
Well, what I've found is that we have a lot of consumers that come in and they're discouraged because they have purchased snake oil, for lack of a better term.
I like that.
And they've paid an excessive amount for this snake oil. So they said, you know, Ed, I'm on a CBD regimen. The website told me that it was going to provide anti-inflammatory and analgesic and all of these other fantastic properties, and I haven't felt anything. And I look at the bottle, and it may be a 1 or 2 ounce bottle, and the entirety of the bottle has 10 milligrams of CBD in it. And I say, well, I want you to take 30 milligrams on a daily basis. So it's very important that we realize that while there are many reputable online resources in the state of Nevada, CBD, if I recommend people buy their CBD through a licensed dispensary, we are highly scrutinized, and the amount of oversight that the state has shown in this industry, you know, we're as highly regulated, if not more regulated, than the gaming industry, the medical industry. You know, I've got a inspector in my facility somewhere between 4 and 10 times per year. Every product that I sell has a seed to sale tracking mechanism where we know from the time that that plant is planted until it is consumed by a consumer, we can trace the batch back. So it's very important. You know, you don't buy your Vicodin from the local 7-Eleven or gas station. I probably wouldn't recommend buying your CBD from either location, because you have no idea what you're getting. You know, this is kind of the, you know, many of us remember back when, you know, the grapefruit diet or these various different things that over the course of our lives. And this is the newest, I don't want to call it a fad, but it's the newest health and wellness supplement to kind of hit the market. And so we need to be cognizant of where we're acquiring that from.
So just quickly, I'm just curious, like on Amazon, is that such a low dosage because it is illegally federally, and then therefore Amazon can't ship, you know, all across the country, so it has to be below what would be a helpful dosage? Is that kind of the gist of it?
No, oftentimes it's that, you know, the CBD is not inexpensive to harvest from the plant. You know, it's an extracted product from the plant, and so you can imagine that if you know, there's a suspension agent associated with a lot of the ways that we deliver CBD. A lot of it comes in hemp oil. So you take hemp oil and you add additional CBD to it, increasing the total available milligrams. There's also a medium chain triglyceride or coconut oil that it's delivered in. And so you can imagine that if coconut oil costs $1 a liquid ounce, and it costs, let's pretend, $40 to put some CBD in it. Well, if I only put $1 worth of CBD in it, my profit is increased exponentially by just selling, you know, coconut oil as opposed to CBD.
Right, but because I put a little bit of CBD in it, I can call it a CBD, you know, product. And okay, I get it. Thank you.
The important thing is to look at how many milligrams of CBD are in the vessel or the container that you're purchasing. You know,
Right.
So that's really the primary. You know, that's the primary measuring point. And then the other thing that I would caution folks about is there's a lot of non-domestically produced CBD, and like many other things that originate from other countries, I'm going to use China as an example, sometimes it may be buyer beware. We're not sure what type of testing standards are required in other countries. So again, I would recommend that people purchase their CBD from some place that can produce third-party laboratory testing results.
Right. No, thank you, Ed. And just on that, Ed, so what does it look like as far as the growing, quality controls, dosages? How does that all look? How does that work, like in your facility? Did you grow it? Do you source it from somewhere else?
So I'm gonna talk about two different things. So we are a organic producer of cannabis, which is the THC rich plant. And so at some point during our podcast here, if we have time, I'll pan to our greenhouse where I'll show you where we produce all of our cannabis in-house. CBD is typically derived from the hemp plant, which is a sister plant to, it's marijuana in the sense that the plant is the same. One of them is a high THC, one of them hemp being a low THC. So the essential oil is extracted from hemp, being CBD. So we don't grow our CBD on site. We do source it from a domestic farm that is an organic producer. And we, believe me, have spent countless hours making sure that the input material that we ultimately put our name on is of the highest quality, because my reputation and the reputation of Soul Cannabis is of the utmost importance to me. So we source it from a domestic supplier. We make sure that all of the ingredients that go into it are of the highest quality, ensuring that the patients or consumers are ending up with that. Every batch of our CBD is independently tested by a certified laboratory. We use a local lab that is comprised of a number of PhDs from the university that I'm sure if I mentioned, Leslie would be, intimately aware of some of the folks that own this laboratory. So, in my opinion, the highest quality and the most scrutinized product available in the state.
And I just ask, I think if I understand correctly, hemp seeds are crushed to get hemp oil, and the CBD is actually extracted from the leaves and stalks of the hemp plant. Is that correct?
It is correct, Leslie, in the sense that that's a slight overgeneralization. So hemp oil, yes, is expelled or pressed from hemp seed. CBD is typically extracted from the flower or the bud. For any of us that have ever consumed marijuana, that bud that we have ground up and smoked, the hemp plant produces a bud that is similar to that. So, and it looks kind of like a hop. If anybody's ever seen the way that hops grow. So we take that flower off of the plant. It's dried. It's typically extracted in a way similar to the way that they decaffeinate coffee, which is called supercritical CO2 extraction. So we take a very high pressure, low temperature CO2, we run it across the plant material, and the oil that is then extracted from that plant material is then further filtered so that we end up with a very, very pure form of CBD.
Did you get that, Annette? Did you take good notes?
I think I'll have to replay this.
Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, Leslie. Over my head.
I'm going to make it easier for you. I suspect that there's a fair amount of our audience that at some point has used lavender oil or has seen lavender oil or cinnamon oil. So CBD is extracted from the hemp plant the same way that lavender oil is extracted from the lavender plant. They essentially, for layman's terms, they just squeeze the oil out of the lavender plant, and that's where we get lavender oil. And they do that in a similar fashion, although far more efficiently. They don't actually squeeze lavender. They extract it the exact same way that they do CBD. I apologize.
No, you're good, Ed. I was kind of like partly joking, tongue in cheek. So, no, thank you. So one of the things Annette and I were talking about earlier that we're kind of curious about, if I come and visit, one of the local dispensaries, what should I know? Am I being fingerprinted as I go in the door? Am I on video? Is the federal government going to be reaching out, wanting to know why I'm using marijuana? How does that all work for someone who doesn't know? What does it look like?
So basically what happens is so that we can ensure that nobody under the age of 21, unless they have an active medical card, enters our facility. Upon arriving at our facility, your ID will be scanned by a state-approved and federally approved scanner that verifies that your ID is current. That data is not retained with the exception of if a customer wants to join our loyalty program, we simply enter their phone number so that they can accumulate, points similar to some other shopping experiences. So you would come, you would present your ID. All of the facilities are very, very security oriented. So you're going to be on video from the time that you arrive, but that is more so to ensure that there's no diversion of the product. There's not illegal sales taking place. You're then going to, in our case, you can come and visit. We've got a very nice lounge area where you can sit and you can talk, you can read a magazine, have a cup of coffee. You would then make your way back to the retail portion, and a bud tender, which is what we have affectionately named our retail staff, would then answer any questions that you had, kind of direct you in helping you make some recommendations based on what you're trying to accomplish through the use of marijuana. If as we do oftentimes, if you were a cancer patient or something that was battling serious illness, we would go into a consultation area where we could have a much more private, intimate conversation with people or with the patients, so as to not feel like they were talking about a very traumatic, life event in a captive audience. The difference between entering as currently it's called recreational. I call it adult use. So adult use means that if you're of the age of 21, you can enter a facility and you can legally acquire marijuana. You pay a much higher tax rate than if you are a medical patient. So if you get a medical card for the state of Nevada, which is a fairly easy process to go through, there's an interview process that your doctor goes through, and then you're issued a state ID. You would present that medical card, and then it would save you a 10% in the tax rate that you're charged when you finish your transaction.
Okay. And just on that, Ed, does it cost to get a medical marijuana card, and where would I go to get one if I was interested?
It does cost. There's several both online resources, and then there's several standalone facilities throughout the state that offer consultations. They've got an on-site doctor who will ask you, why you intend upon using marijuana, run you through of question and answer periods. Again, we have a lot of those resources on our website. I'd happily rattle them off. They're fairly lengthy, so I would.
Maybe we need to have Ed move.
I don't know if you can move location, Ed. You're kind of dropping out. When you got great information, but we're not hearing it at the moment. And just for the benefit of everyone who is on the call who's interested in more information, I will get that link from Ed, and the email that goes out tomorrow following up with a recording of the video, I'll include the link there too, so you have access to the resources that Ed was making mention, and the same for anything Leslie might have. I'll make sure we include that.
Perfect.
Try again, Ed.
Any better?
Yes, much better.
Yes, I apologize. I let my phone get a little farther away from me. So ultimately, there's a lot of places that you can get the medical card recommendations, and I'll make sure that all of that information is included in the link that I send you for tomorrow.
Great, thanks, Ed.
Thank you. And I have a question, Ed, about the bud tenders. What kind, because I mean, if I'm going in there and asking for information about some kind of medical issue I'm having and what would help with it, what kind of background do the bud tenders have to be able to offer that information?
So marijuana is most often kind of self-taught, if you will. We do put all of our employees, team members, as I like to call them, through a a very rigorous training and educational component using, the 20 plus years of information that, I have acquired, in addition to a lot of written resources. We do a monthly training where they are educated as to the latest and greatest advancements. So we have been very specific at our facility about making sure that we have highly educated staff. And again, within the industry, we'd be highly regarded as probably the most medicinally minded facility in the state. Not to say that you won't get great information from other facilities, but you may also get, a 22-year-old that this is his first job.
Thank you.
Got it. Yeah. So what are some kind of questions that I should be asking if I was to go into a dispensary? What are some things that are common, like good questions to ask?
Well, first of all, I think it's almost the reverse. What happens is when a patient or customer enters our facility for the first time, that is noted when they check in. And so we make sure that our staff understands that it's your first visit. So we start by saying, hey, do you have any questions? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish? And we just really try to have a very open dialogue with the client so that we can establish what they're hoping to accomplish. Because if either party has an unrealistic expectation of what they think is going to be accomplished, if somebody comes in with a missing
Ed, I need to interrupt you really quick. Ed, I think you need to move again because you're cutting in and out again.
Okay. Let's see if I can find a better spot that I'm right next to.
You're sounding good right now.
Don't move from that spot.
Okay. Great. Now I'm standing in the middle of the room looking awkward. Am I still good?
Yes.
I think so, Ed, for the moment.
So I guess my point was that we try to have a very open dialogue with the client so that we understand what their expectations are. If you come in and you're missing a limb and you think that marijuana is going to help you regrow that limb, then we are going to fall short of your expectation. Whereas if you come in with chronic pain, we probably are going to be able to provide some guidance as to something that will reduce that pain. And I'm going to share with you very, very quickly my own experience. So when I had my shoulder replaced, my doctor 6 months after said, Ed, how would you describe the effectiveness of using marijuana as a treatment? And I said, the pain was still there, but it just felt like that neural pathway from my shoulder to my head was interrupted. So like I would get home at the end of the day and my wife would say, well, how does your shoulder feel? And then I'd say, well, heck, it hurts. And she said, well, how did it feel all day? And I said, well, nobody asked me how it felt. So it had just kind of distracted me from the fact that I had that pain. It's oftentimes the reason why when you go to the doctor as a young child to get a shot, they say, hey, look at the pretty picture on the wall. And then they give you the shot and your mind is not on what's happening. Your mind is on looking at the cute puppy.
Right. So just on that, Ed, so I assume that doesn't mean you were walking around for several months high because you're using a CBD-based product versus people thinking of, smoking pot and getting high, correct?
Well, I'll be honest with you. It was a multifaceted. I never drive under the influence. I make sure that I consume this like all other medications responsibly. But I would have a gummy in the morning. A gummy bear, as folks refer to them. So it would have some THC in it. But I would monitor that use to the point where I didn't feel inebriated, but I felt pain relief. you know, oftentimes people think that when they take a pharmaceutical, they're not getting high per se. But I can tell you that the first time that I took a Vicodin, even though I was using it to treat pain, it definitely altered my mental state. So high is a relative term.
Great.
So Leslie or Ed, did you have anything to add? I think I'd like to open it up to audience question and answers in just a moment, or audience questions. And for those who have typed in questions, thank you. We'll definitely go through all of those. I see quite a few questions on the screen. But before we jump to that, anything that we've missed that's important? And maybe if we can get your video working, Ed, and if you're up for it, maybe you could just do us a quick walkthrough of your facility there. But let me jump to you first, Leslie. Did you have anything important you wanted to add?
No, I think I'd like to leave enough time to get audience questions, because I think those are always good, engaging, educational opportunities for all of us. So.
Great, thank you, Leslie. Ed?
I would just say to keep an open mind and to make sure that you definitely include either your care provider, your doctor, and your spouse and or children in it. When I say children, you know, if you're a senior, your adult child in making these decisions, because the last thing we want is somebody taking a product and nobody knowing that they've started a marijuana regimen, and then something, you know, them saying, geez, we don't know why mom's over in the corner laughing uncontrollably. You know, so it's just important to make sure that you keep an open mind and don't be embarrassed about the fact that, you know, you're considering this as an option. You know, more and more and more people are using it. I would tell you the average demographic that we see is a 64-year-old female. So it's not necessarily the people that you would think are visiting the dispensary. If you'd like, I can take a quick 30-second walk through the facility, or we can answer all of the questions, and then we can do that as time allows at the end.
Let's do it now, Ed. We've got a little bit of time. I'm sure you've got a beautiful facility. I know, Leslie, you've been there. I've had the opportunity to see it. So yeah, let's just do a quick, so people know what we're kind of talking about, or what you're talking about.
I'm just gonna quickly pan. So what we're looking at here is the lounge area that I had indicated. You're going to be able to see the greenhouse, which is where our product is produced. You can see my team members are out there diligently watering and tending to the plants. So upon arriving at the facility, and I'm trying to be quick and hopefully not blurring the video.
And for those who are just listening in, who don't have the visual, Ed's just kind of walking us through as he's explaining, you know, what the facility there looks like.
So basically, when you arrive, you would enter through the front door. This is our intake area where your identification would be checked. You would enter in through the door here. This is quarantined or roped off at this point because of the COVID situation. Typically, we have coffee and tea available for our guests. You would then make your way down. We have a number of different identifying posters that we've come up with. These jars that you see on the wall would typically be full of the marijuana flower, because they all have a distinctive smell and effect, so you could smell them. We have lots of displays here where you can see various different types of the product. We have the specials that we offer throughout the facility. A number of display cases highlighting, you know, the trophies that we've been given over the course of time. And then you would make your way down to the actual transactional portion of the facility, which you can see the staff here actively tending to the clients. We have a large deck where during the summer months in non-COVID situations, we do music and food every Saturday. So we have really tried to make our facility much more of an experience than just a transactional place. You know, it's not a 7-Eleven. It's a place where you can come and congregate with like-minded individuals.
We just lost you.
We just lost Ed.
Uh-oh.
Per state law, can't come here. you can't come and expect to consume marijuana, but you can come and connect with like-minded people.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ed. Fantastic.
Thank you.
And actually, Ed, if we wanted to come and do a tour for those people who are on the call, is that something you think we could arrange?
It definitely is. We do hundreds of tours every year. Typically, what we try to make sure that we've got a decent sized group, because it does take about 45 minutes to an hour. We do a lot of question and answer periods. So if you wanted to put together a group of folks after the limiting factor of COVID is behind us, I would welcome having anybody that wanted to come down and experience our facility.
Okay, thank you, Ed. That'd be wonderful. And yeah, obviously it's not going to be next week, but I'm just typed in here. So for those people who may be interested who are on the webinar, I'm just going to stick up a little poll on your screen for those who have an interest. We don't have to buy anything, Ed. I just want to be clear. We can come as a group, have a look, learn, see a bit more. But you're not going to make us buy anything, are you?
There's no purchase required. Really, what we pride ourselves on is making sure that whether or not you choose to be a consumer or not, you leave more educated than you were when you arrived.
Wonderful. So everyone should see a poll that I've just put up on the screen. This webinar has the ability to do a poll, and it's just a simple question. Please, and this is not a commitment, not saying we'll definitely do it, but I hope to, but please invite me to a future dispensary tour. So if you'd like us to reach out, I'll reach out to Edwin. As he said, we can do a tour. And for those who have said yes, we'll reach out to you. We'll send you an email or call you, whatever makes sense at the time. And then we'll organize a date and a time. We can all go down and educate ourselves a little bit more. So I'll leave that up for a moment for those who, just to respond. If you are on the phone and you're dialed in and you're interested, just give us a call and we'll just add your name to the list. Or similarly, if you can't, the technology is not working for you today, feel free to call us and we'll make sure we add you to that list. And again, it's not a commitment to attend. It's just we'll reach out, let you know when it is, and if that works for you, great. And if not, no problem at all. So let's just jump over some questions that we have, and let's start here. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can actually read what they say. So the first one came in that said, let me just read it in advance so I don't trip over my tongue. Don't have a medical need now, but thinking ahead. Marijuana never had an effect on me. I tried it once before in the 60s and even again 10 to 15 years ago. And by the way, caffeine doesn't affect me either. Will cannabis ever be a medical solution if needed for this person, given that? Or should I take that off my list of potential solutions? So should they revisit using marijuana? It didn't seem to help them in the past. Leslie, or would you like to take that?
What I would say is depending upon the method in which they tried to consume it previously, there are certain people that don't have an enzyme present in their stomach or their digestional tract to process THC as an edible component. So I would stress that if it's something that they're interested in, that yes, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I didn't like avocados for the first 35 years of my life, and now I love them.
Excellent.
I think I would also just add to that, what medical issue is it that you're trying to treat? I think that's the other thing to really explore is, what is it that, if you're trying to get hair growth, that might not be the answer versus, versus are you having chronic fatigue syndrome? And I think, that plays a big issue.
And
Now, Leslie, I'm going to tell you, it does work for facial hair, but not so much on top.
And Ed, you had mentioned previously, like the different components of it too, right? So what you took in the past, you don't necessarily, if you don't know exactly how much of it was used, wouldn't that have an effect?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I really quickly want to touch on the fact that, Nevada, again, has the most stringent testing and regulatory components. We have established dosing so for example, when you ate a brownie back in the 60s, you didn't know if it had 10 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams of THC in it. So by law, the maximum per serving dose in a edible product is 10 milligrams. So again, it's very important to understand that as the science continues to evolve, so is the the targeting and the dosing. The other important thing to recognize is that right now, THC and CBD are the two most widely talked about compounds, but there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different compounds within the plant. But because of the federal prohibition, we haven't been able to accurately study it. So there's CBG and CBN and THCA. You know, every day there's a new analyte or compound discovered that seems to have a more targeted effect. So as Leslie indicated, depending upon what you're trying to accomplish, hey, I want to get off my daily ibuprofen regimen. Yeah, I think that we can help with that. You know, if again, you're trying to regrow hair, that might be a struggle.
Thank you, Ed. And just a reminder for those who are wishing to ask a question, who are dialed in, you can press *9 on your phone and we'll unmute you so you can ask Leslie or Ed your question. Or simply just click on the raise hand and again, we'll unmute you and you can ask your question, or again, feel free to type in your question. So I'm just going to jump to the next question. On people's screens at the moment, we've just put up again another way to let us know you'd like to be registered for the upcoming seminars. So on March 28th next week, we have Kindred Hospice are going to talk about, sorry, May 28th. What did I say? March, I'm going back in time. May 28th on Thursday at 10 a.m. What you should know about hospice and bereavement. And I think that'll be very helpful, not what you expect. And then on June 18th, we have our main monthly seminar, The Truth About Flipping the Money Switch. So for those who have built great habits over life, saving money, talking about the psychology of maybe using our money wisely in retirement and some strategies and things to do that, and a lot of psychology behind it. And then on July 16th, we have The Truth About Avoiding Scams and Other Deviousness. And we'll have someone from Washoe County, probably the postmaster, and a couple of other panelists on that. So let's jump back to our next question. So with cannabis being legal in many states now, why is the federal government slow to declassify cannabis as being legal? Which I guess who free up money to educate doctors and people in the medical field to give us advice? I think we kind of touched on that a little bit, but Leslie, Ed, did you have anything else you want to?
Ed, did you hear the question? Because you came off the screen.
I actually had to shut my video back off because I think the question was, with it being legal on a state-by-state basis, why has the federal government continued with the prohibitive stance?
Yeah, correct. Because I think we have 33 states thereabouts now that have legalized marijuana?
We do, and I'll just tell you, I don't want to get into the conspiracy theorist in me, but I will tell you that if something that can be grown in the backyard potentially can be as effective as many pharmaceutical products that are making companies vast amounts of money, there may be some influence being applied at a federal level to haste to cause that prohibitive stance to still be in place. You know, more and more states have looked at the revenue that's being generated by this. More and more states have understood that, you know, there is, you know, clear medical effectiveness in treating a wide variety of things. So I think it has less to do with health and safety and more to do with financial challenges, I would just say.
Yep, makes sense.
And I think, you know, if you look at any industry, there are lobbyists that are paid a lot of money to support whatever their belief is. And I think, you know, that's true in this case too. I mean, you've got lobbyists that are very effective in what they do, and that's why they're so expensive.
Right.
Yeah, and Leslie, that's a beautiful point. I think it's important for us to remember that marijuana has kind of made its way off the side of the mountain, if you will, and so many of the pioneers in the marijuana industry were not the most conforming folks in the world, and so they didn't understand initially that they needed to hire a lobbyist or they needed to pool their resources to affect change on a federal level.
Thank you. So our next question, please repeat, how many milligrams of CBD, so this was from earlier, should be in a topical balm lotion? So I guess that's maybe for you, Ed, or?
The topical really depends upon, there's a wide variety. Topicals are for anybody that's wondering what topical is, just think about a lotion. So depending upon what you're trying to accomplish, I would not necessarily say that a topical is the most effective way of consuming or utilizing CBD. And the example that I give people is, rarely have I rubbed my ibuprofen on my shoulder and it made me feel better. While there is, a transdermal absorption or absorption through the skin, we have CBD balms in-house that range from 100 milligrams in a 1 ounce vial to 1,000 milligrams in a 1 ounce vial. And it can be very effective at site-specific treatment, eczema and things of that nature. But if you're looking for overall analgesic effect or anti-inflammatory effect, I don't know that a topical is the best way to administer that product.
Thank you, Ed. And this attendee didn't mention for what purpose. So yeah, good point you made.
I would agree with that also, that from a safety standpoint with other medications, you get very little systemic absorption, so absorption throughout your whole body when you're using a topical agent. So from the perspective of drug interactions, that's not a concern. From an efficacy standpoint, as Ed just pointed out, unless it's really a localized spot that you're trying to treat, topical administration is typically not all that helpful. Although there are some products that, especially if they're an alcohol-based product, you get better absorption and are sometimes more effective. So.
Great, thanks, Leslie. And that actually just answers another question here. An attendee had asked, for pain relief, is there a difference between a skin cream and taking orally? And that's what you just answered. So yeah, thank you. So we'll mark that one as done. And then a question for Ed, can you take a private call later? Are you open, Ed, for people to reach out to you? Are you willing to help provide advice, have them come and visit you at the dispensary? And I assume that would be a yes? Or maybe not. I'm going to say yes to that question on Ed's behalf. I'm sure Ed would be happy to talk to anyone who is after further information. And then can we get a copy of the article, I think, Leslie, you were referring to? Was there an article you referred to on?
I think that was Ed. He had talked about the white paper from Israel.
Oh, okay. So we'll make sure whatever Ed has, we'll provide a link in our follow-up email that goes out tomorrow.
I also have a couple links I will send you. Interestingly enough, UC San Diego has a pretty big cannabis research, and it's more scientific data, but UCLA also has some information that's really more for general public knowledge that I thought was really good. And then I also came across another link this morning that was dementiacarecentral.com that had some pretty interesting and seemed legitimate information. And they also had a disclaimer, which I thought was very interesting at the bottom, that the website was funded from a grant from the National Institutes of Aging, which is a federal entity. So I thought that was really interesting. But there was some good information there relating to cannabis use and in general, but also as it relates to dementia and some of the behavioral expressions that occur with dementia. So I'll send you those links to include.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, definitely send those on to me and we'll share that.
Thank you.
And then I see a hand up. I'll get to that person. I won't mention anyone's names for anyone feeling uncomfortable. I want everyone to be comfortable to ask questions, so hence not mentioning names. But another attendee's asked, do senior communities allow residents to use cannabis on site? So I don't know whether Ed or Leslie, you can answer that. I actually see one of our community sponsors online. I'm not sure if they'd be happy to take that, but I'm going to call on them anyway if you guys don't have an answer.
I'm going to jump in real quick. So because of COVID-19, initially when we were shut down and went to a delivery only model, I will tell you that the overwhelming majority of the long-term care, assisted care, and just general senior living facilities in Northern Nevada, I frequented very, very frequently with deliveries. So while I think there may be a apprehension to combustible or to smoking marijuana, I had been told that one of the larger question marks facing senior facilities right now was that the typical happy hour had transitioned from a glass of wine to a more communal version of marijuana. Maybe they were passing a marijuana cigarette or a joint around. So I think as the baby boomers start to enter those facilities, cannabis use is going to become more and more prevalent.
And I would just say from my experience of doing consulting with the assisted living and the skilled nursing facilities, they don't allow smoking. So as Ed said, anything that's combustible, but they don't allow smoking in the facilities or around. They're typically smoke-free facilities. So that's just been my experience.
That would make sense because that impacts other people. But given it's legal medically, if you've got a gummy bear or a lotion or whatever, then yeah. So thank you. Our next question. Well, let me jump to, they put their hand down.
Put his hand down.
The person who just had your hand up, if you'd like to ask again, I'll take you next. But maybe we just answered that question. This question is
put a hand up.
Hand up? Okay,
Yeah.
There we go. So I'm going to unmute you. So the person who's just had their hand up, you're unmuted. So please, direct your question to Ed or Leslie or both.
Well, yes. And my question that was I put in on the chat was actually asking Leslie the article she referred to. She said several months ago she read something that really expounded her knowledge and understanding of it. And I thought her comment was very interesting, and I would like to read that same article.
Okay. Yeah, I will include that link. It was actually an article about the endocannabinoid system that we have within our bodies and all of the receptors that are really in every tissue in our body. So I will definitely dig that article up and send that on for to be sent out. It's a very scientifically oriented article, but it really piqued my interest in it. So
I want to chime in real quick on that because I've always found it very interesting, Leslie, that we have a system specifically designed to absorb cannabinoids, which are the compounds within marijuana. So to think that our creator, or as we evolved, to think that we have a system within our body that's specifically designed to receive that, kind of gives a little bit of the notion that maybe on some level this plant was intended on being consumed. And then I would also say, just so people know, that for many millennia we had these products in our body because some of the livestock that we eventually ate would graze on feral hemp prior to it being prohibited. And so there was CBD and some other things in some of the animal-based proteins that we've consumed, over the course of our human existence. So, maybe it's coincidental that we have a system that's designed to absorb this, or maybe we actually were intended upon having some portion of cannabinoids or THC and CBD in our body.
Thank you, Ed. For the attendee who just asked that a question to Leslie and Ed, did you have anything to follow up? I still have you unmuted.
No, I do not, but I sure appreciate this particular session today.
Yeah, no, thank you for your great question. I'll just mute you and put your hand down. And so our next question For Leslie, what services do you provide there at the Sanford Center for Aging, which is part of UNR's School of Medicine? Do you interact with the public? Can you just tell us more about what you do?
I do. As I said, I'm a geriatric pharmacist, so I'm board certified in geriatrics. And we have a community-based, it's called the Medication Therapy Management Program. And I do comprehensive medication reviews for the general public. It doesn't require a doctor's referral. We can send information back to your providers if you want. If you just want the information, that's entirely up to you. And then the other big part of my job is working on the comprehensive geriatric assessment team. So that is a 90-minute appointment, sometimes they're 2 hours, where we have a geriatrician, a social worker, and then myself, and we meet as a team. We make recommendations regarding psychosocial issues, health, wellness, and as our name implies, the Sanford Center for Aging, our philosophy is we really are for aging. We can't stop it. So we want to make sure that, we're giving elders in our community as much information as we can to improve their quality of life. We have several community wellness programs, and I do some lecturing in those as a guest speaker for Stepping On. It's a balance strengthening class to help prevent falls in older adults. And we have some other clinical programs there too. So I kind of have a lot of different hats, but yes, I do try and interact a lot with the community. That's really my biggest role. And I really see myself as an educator for folks and trying to allow them to be their own advocate. I think that's so important in today's healthcare system. So that's really my goal.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Next question. Ed, so I guess two parts of this. Can I purchase products using cash and or credit card? So how do I pay if there's something I wish to purchase?
So we are currently a cash-only business. We are lobbying both the state and the federal government as actively as we can to allow for different payment forms. But we do have on-site ATMs with almost no fees associated with them. So upon arrival, if you forgot to bring some money, as long as you brought your ATM card and a note from your spouse saying to spend freely, we encourage it.
Very good. And then the other part of that question, I don't know if you can answer this easily, Ed. What would be a representative cost for a pack of 10, 50 milligram CBD patches? I don't know if that's an easy thing to answer or not.
We need you to move, Ed. We can't
Move
hear you.
or turn off video.
Video is off now, so hopefully I'm clear. Representative wise, you're looking at somewhere in the $20 per package neighborhood.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ed. And then maybe for you, Leslie, the best method for delivery for I can't even pronounce these words. That's why you guys are on the call.
Analgesia.
Yeah, how to say that one more time, Leslie?
Analgesia.
Yeah, that's it. An anti-inflammatory relief would be for arthritic knee pain. So the best delivery method.
I think if it's really, I guess my personal thought, I would start with a topical just to see if that works, just because we're avoiding drug interactions and, disease state interactions with that. So I would say a topical would be my preference to try and see if it works. And if that does not work, then an oral product. I guess my preference, although they're, I think, trickier and they take longer to take effect, the gummies kinds of things, just because there is no combustion involved. Because we know anytime we burn something, we have byproducts and toxins that occur no matter what we're burning. So that would be my third choice. Ed may have a different answer to that, but that's my thought.
Oh, great. Thank you, Leslie. Ed, did you have anything different or anything you wanted
No,
to
I would agree. I would say that I would start with the topical. I also want people to understand, specifically if we're talking about a CBD regimen, that this is not the same as a ibuprofen in the sense that you don't take it at the onset of pain. You know, this is something more attuned to or akin to your multivitamin regimen that you take. So this is actually a daily supplement that you're taking so that you've got titration, you know, basically it being present in your body at all times, because, you know, inflammation is constantly present in your body. And so if you're trying to deal with that naturally, it's best to have, you know, systemic titration, or essentially having it in your system at all times. So the quick way, hey, let's rub it on our knee, let's see how it works. We could take an orally derived product, which takes a little bit longer to onset if you're dealing with excruciating pain. Unfortunately, while there is a potentially unintended consequence associated with combusting, you know, our cardiovascular system is the quickest onset that we have. So inhalation, whether it's through a non-combustible vaporizable product or actually combusting you know, marijuana.
Great, thanks, Ed. So next question I have is, Leslie, are you familiar and comfortable with vitamin regimens compared to pharmaceuticals?
I definitely think there is a place for them. Again, this is an interesting subject, and it's because healthcare providers, whether it be a pharmacist or a physician or a nurse practitioner or a PA, there is very, very little information as far as the educational curriculum with the nutraceuticals and supplement products. So I, again, kind of went down a rabbit hole as I got more and more interested in them, and have really taught myself a lot about them. I tend to try and still stick with the evidence-based information. You know, if you have a product that you want to take and I don't see that there's any other harm with anything else that you take, you know, then that's great, go for it. But I always try and look with everything else that you're taking, are there any kinds of interactions there? Because they're herbal products, and that means they're active compounds, just along the same line as cannabis. You know, it's an herbal product is a plant typically, and has active substances in there. So while I don't claim to know everything about all of them, I definitely do a lot of research into trying to find good information about them.
Great, thank you, Leslie. And then I'm not sure who can take this. I have some Optivida, I don't even know how to pronounce the product, Optivida CBD, if I'm saying that correct, Optivida, Optivida CBD, that says on the label it has 18 milligrams of hemp oil extract per serving. So the question is, does it have CBD in it? Should the label say 15 to 50 of CBD on a good brand? I don't know if either of you can elaborate on what's being asked.
Yeah,
way over my head.
I suspect that I suspect that what you're referring to is a specific brand name, and what I would tell you is that unless it specifically identifies the milligrams per serving of CBD, more than likely what they are getting is just a hemp oil that may have trace amounts of CBD, but not necessarily measurable or quantifiable. But again, when I share my contact information, I'm going to share the email. I'm happy to have this person take a picture of the label, send it to my email, and I will give him or her my, you know, honest opinion about what it is that they have purchased.
Thank you, Ed. So this could be an example, and obviously I don't know, of snake oil, because it says, you know, hemp oil extract per serving, but on the label it says CBD, and as you said, maybe trace elements so they can justify that, not that singling out this product, but that's the kind of thing you're saying to look out for, I take.
Yeah, it is. I mean, CBD is the latest and greatest catchphrase. I mean, you walk through any supermarket, CVS. I mean, everybody's got a CBD product. You know, again, many moons ago, we used to have different things that everybody in the world was taking, and some of them proved to be long-lasting and effective, and others proved to be, you know, colored water.
I read an interesting survey about this that, and I don't remember the exact amount, but I want to say it was about 50% of products that are labeled as having CBD are what we call misbranding, meaning mislabeling essentially, that so they may say CBD in there, but it really is hemp oil. And I wanted to point out, and I think we had alluded to it earlier, that if you Google CBD oil on Amazon, it comes up with, you know, a boatload of products in there. But my understanding is, and from what I could tell, none of them are really truly CBD products. They may they're hemp oil essentially, which are great sources of omega-3 fatty acids, but they're not really going to do for you what the CBD is. So again, you know, as Ed has said several times, it's really going to a reputable dispensary, so you know what you're getting. And CBD is not inexpensive. So if you're buying a $4 bottle of something that says it's CBD, I would think twice about that.
Great advice, Leslie. Thank you. And so I'm just going to take one last question. We're at 11:31. I know other people have questions. Unfortunately, we've kind of ran out of time, and we appreciate all the great questions people have asked, some really good ones. But just very simply from one of you, what is the difference between hemp oil extract that you were just talking about and CBD oil?
I'm just going to tell you, you know, CBD is what I'm going to call medical compound. Hemp oil is the oil that is produced from the hemp plant. You know.
So not the same.
Not the same. Not in any sense of the word.
Okay, I think that answers the question. So yeah, great. Thank you both. So you both have been fantastic. You're a wealth of knowledge. I know you've got a fantastic facility down there, Ed. I know Sanford Center for the Aging, you're one of our sponsors, great resource in the community. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. I wish we had more time to hang out with you and learn more, given you have so much information to share. But yeah.
We might do that on the tour.
On the tour, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So again, thank you on behalf of all of our attendees today and on our behalf.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us, and yeah, have a great
day.
rest of the day.
Thank
Have
you.
a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye.
Ed. Bye.